What are we on? 7 or 8 Tech 2? 16 episodes. Jesus. From Karen to Becky, Athol Kay, Married Man's Sex Life Primer. Been a long road, you guys. I hope you've learned a lot about relationship dynamics, fixing a dead bedroom, the male action plan, all the things that have been wrong with it, and how we've advanced across the years as a bunch of men getting online and swapping notes about how to do this thing better. As always, I'm Ryan Stone. I know these episodes aren't numbered too well, so once the live stuff is done, I'm going to go back, renumber them, have them on the Sidebar playlist. If you guys haven't done it, go subscribe to the channel. Go check out the Sidebar playlist. We're going through just about everything that's Red Pill canon, as far as I could refer to it as that. And it's a great old time. Teach you just about everything you need to know so you can get out there and just start slaying. Wives, husbands, I don't judge. Girlfriends, boyfriends, plates. Whatever it is, it works for you. Now, having said that, we've come to the end. And while I had to correct a lot of the stuff about his cheating episode, I am going to correct a huge amount of stuff in his how to vet and how to choose a wife and his marriage 2.0 conversation, the last 2 chapters. Essentially, how to find yourself a wife and how to find yourself in a legal framework, I guess. Quick shout out. Thank you, Matthew Magda, for your $10 super chat. I hate it when women get skinny fat. Calorie restriction and cardio is the female standard, but the result is loose and sloppy. How do you get an LTR to do resistance training for firming and toning? We're going to, near the end there where he talks about his vetting process, there's going to be a point that kind of touches that. So I'm going to bring this back up when it fits in well here. So don't worry. I see you. Thank you very much. And we're going to carry on here. So his first thing is one and done. So I expect most readers are already married, but for those younger men who aren't married yet, I hate how he says yet, by the way, like it's a foregone conclusion. I'll cover here some possible ideas for what you should be looking for in a wife. Consider this aimed at a 20-year-old. If you're middle-aged and remarrying, some of it won't apply exactly the same. In short, though, don't just vote on her with your penis. Which people tend not to. Guys tend to lead with their heart, and that's the issue. Women that aren't wife material waste your dating time. Again, this is where you can tell he's got a very feminine approach to this stuff because he's talking about this as if you're a chick having chick goals. Locking down a girl isn't your goal. Your goal is to be top tier. The girl's job is the relationship. It's always has been. And we're going to get into reasons in the second chapter, this second half, as to why. It's not just, real men should be this and real men should be that. There's a legal framework and a justification why it kind of, even if it's not naturally this way, the way we've organized everything is to the point where it has to be this way. At least the way things are now. So who knows? Hopefully this whole series of videos doesn't age well, but I have a suspicion that it's going to get worse before it gets better. As he says here, a key problem is that most men do not go looking for a wife. They start looking for a date and try to turn the date into more dates, and then the dates into a girlfriend, then a girlfriend into a serious relationship, and then, only then, do they worry about whether or not to bridge the relationship into a marriage. Of course, by then, you may be realizing that you've been backing the wrong horse, as what was great for a few dates, that would be tits, ass, and easy sex, isn't always the best woman for a lifetime together. I don't see this at all. What I see is a guy getting dragged through each decision gate of a relationship. The plate thing, girl says yes to sleep with him. Or, acts yes. When I say yes, don't assume it's just like a contract or something silly like that. When it starts going from just a plate to dating, it's usually because the girl pressures, where are we at? And the guy decides to go along with it. Marriage, more often than not, it's usually a girl pressuring a guy to get married and the guy acquiescing. Because they don't have strong boundaries. So it's really just encouraging the girl. If she nags enough, she'll get what she wants. Which is why, once you get through that marriage, nags for a kid, and then just nags him to do the dishes. It just sets up, from the very beginning, a standard where all you need to do is be persuaded by the most shrill, painful stuff ever, because you'll agree to it just to make the pain go away. What am I saying? Am I saying that battle axe wives are the fault of the husband? Not so much. What I'm saying is the inner Karen is brought out by a man with weak boundaries. If you don't want to get married, and we'll get into the common law stuff later, if you don't want to get married, saying no and being willing to lose the girl is what you have to do. If you don't have that, then you don't have a boundary. What you have is just an investment in the girl's negging career. You don't want that. You don't want that. So when he starts talking about this, like we're trying to pressure ourselves into it, I don't know what he's talking about. Having said that, he married his high school sweetheart. They were both their first. So again, clearly it's a guy that hasn't been slaying for his 20s. And it kind of shows. It's kind of similar to the Jordan Peterson thing. The one thing here, which is kind of nice, he does elaborate on, if you guys remember the idea that look at a girl's mom, see what she looks like, girls that gain a bunch of weight. He kind of expands on it a bit, which is nice. So an extra 30 pounds on a 20-year-old girl, even though it'll look voluptuous and kind of nice, can turn into an extra 100 pounds within a year of having her first baby. That's a decidedly different effect on your sexual interest in her. And he says the old trick here is to look at her mother and older sisters if she has them. At the same time, just seeing her lifestyle now, realizing that her metabolism gives her a 10-year buffer to act a damn fool. And if she doesn't have that stuff in check, chances are she's not going to have it in check in the future. Again, Matt here is talking about skinny fat. So here's the funny thing about skinny fat. If you guys don't know, that's somebody who's very thin, but still has a lot of fat. But because it's not like, it's padded very well, it's all across the body in even amounts or whatever, it just makes them look thin. They don't have a lot of musculature to them. Now he's asking how to change that. I would argue you really don't. You can't tell a girl to go work out. You can inspire her to by you being fit and you working out, and then her doing that to kind of keep a check on you, especially if there's hot bunnies at the gym. You can help her set up a program, but for the most part, most guys I've seen, you're really dragging her kicking and screaming along to this thing. So, another point to consider too, because girls have a lot less testosterone than men. We're like 30 times that of women, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it's that much. It's like an order of magnitude. What this does is it means girls have a harder time putting on muscle and a harder time recovering from exercise. And the way their muscles are designed, they actually have more type 2 fibers, which if you don't know, type 1, mostly ATP based, very quick twitch, small bursts of energy, tire quickly. Type 2 fibers are fueled by glucose and the bloodstream. They have lactic acid. They tend to be more endurance based, long-term stuff. I don't know why. Some people say it's because women have to hold babies all their lives. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true. It seems a little bit weird. But they're actually not really designed very well for strength training. They can do it, but it doesn't hit on the same markers as a guy. They're not getting the same dopamine hits. They're not getting the same results from it. Never mind, girls are terrified of getting big. So be aware that, and because as a guy with all this extra testosterone, that allows us to have a secondary fat transport mechanism. So free-floating testosterone helps, and I can't remember the exact process. There was a Joe Rogan where they had it all long ago, but the idea was your testosterone is one way of a transport of the fat between your fat cells and your muscles when they need it for energy. There's a secondary one which has to do with oxygenation, and I think there's a third one too, but again, the point is women don't have that testosterone route. So for a lot of the times, weight training works much better for men than it does for women. At the same time, women can do things that from a guy's perspective would cause a huge loss of muscle mass with less ill effects. So they actually are kind of better off with calorie restriction than you'd think. Now, in order to get her working out, like I said, nobody's really had a good answer. Best I've seen is just a dread thing. She wants to be more active. They're going to do cardio more often than not. They're going to do, they're not going to do heavy strength training. And they just, again, a girl who's got a proclivity to it, but if she doesn't have an interest in it, you're not going to be able to inspire it any more than you're going to get her to start playing video games with you or playing Risk. The best you can do there is have it as an extreme passion in your life, lead by example, a little bit of dread where she's worried about the bunnies in there, wants to stay in shape, wants you to guide her, and then you can drive her into there. But you can't force the issue. And this is why Athol's talking very early on, the height and weight proportional. It's like, this is the kind of thing you have to select for if you want it, if it's important to you. You can't do it after the fact. And then you can also tell he's kind of old here because he talks about non-smoking. Like, does anybody even know a smoker anymore? Even the people that do, it's just vaping. Reasonably Beautiful, that's a good one. Like, I'll skip a lot. There's a lot of stuff he has in here which is like very old references that if he got married in the early 80s might reference, but Reasonably Beautiful, I like this one too. So there is really no good way to spin this, but yes, indeed, looks do very much matter. You know what I mean? That's that blue pill conditioning thing right there. That's the feminine imperative. I like hot chicks, but he has to apologize for it before he even says it. He has to hedge. And I'm just like so annoyed. You can't talk about being, dominant and then apologize for liking what you like. I just don't find it's a very congruent message in his book. Whatever. We're at where we're at. Good skin tone, long healthy hair, good teeth. These are all absolutely not superficial things to be concerned about. We're not all going to marry supermodels, and even the prom queen is out of reach for but a few. So look for someone as attractive as you can reasonably get who cares about her appearance. It's okay to want her to be attractive as a requirement. This is something, too, that's very important. Who cares about her appearance? Jogging pants, no makeup, and the hair up in that standard tussed-up bun, not going to cut it, especially if you start dating her in her early 20s and that, because women don't get better with age. They generally get worse. It's the process of aging. Now, I'm not going to get into that argument about the wall. Women tend to age faster than men. Women tend to look worse over years than men tend to look better for a while. The point is, if you're with a girl for an extended period of time, her looks are going to fade. It's just the way it is. Now, if you're lucky, because we're aspirational lovers, what happens with guys is we kind of lock in time when we first met her. So that 19-year-old that you first slept with when you were 30, she's always going to be that 19-year-old in your head. You're not going to notice any of her faults. It's called wife goggles. And it's funny because infidelity, constant nagging, beratement, all that horrible relationship stuff that the girls do to these horrible henpecked men slaps them off their face once it gets to a certain point. And once it's off, you lose that aspiration. And then you only see the girl the way she is right now. And, the hot 20-year-old was one thing, but the 45-year-old with 2 kids and a nagging demeanor, you just can't get that back. And this is how a lot of girls just sabotage their relationships. Because they're following their feelings, and their feelings aren't delivering what they want and what they need. And we talked about it before with modern society and the needs for alpha and beta behaviors. It's basically it's like their own version of sexual diabetes. But it's amazing. A girl putting effort, even if she doesn't nail it. That little effort piece right there, it's an investment signal, and that's something you want to select for. If your girl used to be an 8 and now she's a 4, but she's working hard and keeps her up to a 5 as best she can, she's in her 50s now, that'll be all right. You don't have to be the I only bang 9s and 10s crowd, because those are guys that have clearly never been in a relationship for any length of time. Ever. It's just bravado. It's meant to impress men. It's not meant to be realistically mapped to anybody's health or anybody's situation. And that's the same thing. So like with Matt's question there about girls that are skinny fat and that, you just kind of have to make that your boundary. Again, girls could be a one-night stand, or they could be a plate or friends with benefits, however you want to call it. They could be a monogamous girlfriend and boyfriend. They could be a common law or a normal marriage. Just don't go further than you're willing to go if you have to commit to these things. Like I said, after the fact, if you agreed to a girl who doesn't work out and just starves herself and gets skinny fat, once you marry her, it's almost impossible to change that. That's just a part of her character, a part of her being. You really should, and I hate to say it, you should have picked better, bro, but this is part of the process. And this is why I don't agree with vetting in general. Now, I'll end on that, because there's a lot more stuff in here to address, but I'll end on what is the more proper red-pilled approach that's happened over the years. So yeah, good general health. This one's more applicable to guys here. So when he says, if a young woman is on routine medications for various ailments, you need to ask some serious questions about her health. Basically pills. Ritalin, Xanax, Ambien, heavy drinking. If she's treating her health bad this early on, it's only going to get worse. Get that drunk thing where her nose gets big and raspy voice from too much vaping or too much weed. In general, now I'm all for people who are casual users of whatever. God knows I drink enough myself. Your body can handle a lot of abuse, but you really want to select for somebody who's within a healthy range of it. Like if it's at the point that this girl can't get out of bed 5 days a week because she's been so drunk, the only reason you could possibly want to marry her is that Captain Save-A-Ho thing we talked about before, and I'm telling you right now, she doesn't want to be saved. And every girl you date aren't going to get better. They're almost always going to get worse. Pick a girl who's 80% of what you want. The last little bit she can use as investment to keep you around. And again, the working out thing too. So some guys have had examples where girls start joining them at the gym and that. Two things that tended to work, again, like I said before, pre-selection, jealousy. If they're worried that other girls are at the gym, they want to come with, and then they kind of get into it. The other case is they realize they do need to lose a lot of weight, and that's the way to do it. There's actually an account on Twitter. I've done a video on her before. Kayla... Let me see. If I could pull this one up. It might be good. Follow her stuff. Ah, for crying out loud. Alright, I can't find it right now, but Kayla Fertition. Oh, no, wait, I have her on Instagram. And it's kind of neat because she talks about stuff that I wouldn't consider. Where is it? There she is. Alright. So I'll put the link here in the chat. This is my best resource when it comes to women and working out. She describes things in feminine language. She talks about working out in feminine language. She's the most knowledgeable person I know so far when it comes to women working out. So give that one a go. Good general health. But yeah, things get worse. Having said that, there's something I should say. So my little sister was a bit of a horse girl. Absolutely brutal. Crushed men under her heel. Finally, one guy, she was like 20, met one guy out of all the guys she ever dated, which I don't even want to know how many of them, so I'm just going to assume it's one. Didn't put up with her shit. Told her off. Told her, get the hell out of my face. Told her no. Calmed right down. They've been dating ever since. She ended up going halfers. They bought a house together. They live with a house with a bunch of animals. Rancher girl, horse girl, it's what you're going to get, right? But, yeah, she just gave it up. All that, all the drinking, all the drugs, all of her goofy party friends. As soon as she found this guy, she was hooked on him. As soon as she was hooked on him, she ditched all of it. And my own example in my life, I'm not going to get into details, but something fairly similar there too. It's funny. So I don't want to rule out party girls, girls with tattoos, girls with short hair. I call it the Lacy Green effect. If you guys don't know, there's a feminist called Lacy Green. She used to do like sex positive femininity, talking about the patriarchy this, the patriarchy that. Found a boyfriend. Really good dick. All of a sudden, she took the red pill. No men had it bad. While you can't be Captain Save-A-Ho, don't dismiss a girl outright for some arbitrary reasons, because girls are very, very plastic with these things. And this, again, I don't have examples of it from a workout perspective. That's why I kind of, very few examples from it. That's why I kind of hedged with Matt's thing here. But in general, a girl's worldview will change when they find a man that's worth committing to. And here's the weird thing. It's not even that they do it because they think it'll make them happy. They do it because they honestly believe it. It's a condition. It's actually, if you look at that extreme version of that, you're going to find borderline personality disorder. In fact, I bet you anything. Go into the DSV right now. Look up borderline personality disorder. And what you're going to notice, and you'll notice this with narcissistic personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder among men. Take the extreme examples of their criteria, and you're going to notice that sounds like a pretty good woman. And that's the thing with the borderline. They're like an actress that want to fill a role of somebody. Now, borderline people have a hard time committing to it. They do it overboard, and they kind of have extreme highs, but then the extreme lows completely latch on. But a good woman, if you like the San Francisco 49ers, your girl will like the San Francisco 49ers. If you like Minecraft, your girl will like Minecraft. The things you like, she'll like. There's actually an old red pilled post. I want to say this one's an Uncle Vaz one where he says, girls don't have, Girls don't have hobbies. They just have the hobbies of the boys they used to date. Which, I can't say 100% across the board, but it's very true. You're going to find a lot of girls that are into something. Rave scenes or rock scenes, like any of that kind of stuff that they're into, any kind of scenes. Most of the time it's because, I used to date a guy and he introduced me to it and then I just got hooked on it. And yeah, that's kind of this manifestation going around there. And that's why a lot of guys now are like, why is every girl such a thought? Well, it's because every person around them that they aspire to be is a thought. And so they encourage the girls to do this. But I guarantee you can snap a girl right out of that and bring her to you. But you got to be cognizant of it, because if she's not budging, then yeah, you ain't it. You're just the fun plaything in the meantime, and that's fine. But looking at this without ego investment is the only way you're going to find out if you're trying to be Captain Save-A-Ho or fight something that's just not going to happen, or if a girl is actually into you, you're her hypergamous best option, and she starts changing her behavior to invest further in you. Again, relationships are a woman's job, not a man's. Man's job is to be worth a relationship. Totally different. And then you're going to start seeing the signs, but that only happens if you're a little bit jaded, a little bit cynical, hate women just a little bit, and then when they open themselves up to you to be that exception, then you can just be responsive to it. Oh, wow, looks like she's invested. She cleaned up my house and baked me a cake. She made sourdough bread on the weekend. Jeez. Then when she gives the "where are we" speech, you're like, I could maybe give it a shot, or no, it's fine. You don't have to. Just because she wants one doesn't mean you're obliged to give her one. Anyways, moving on. Positive family history. Does she have a reasonably intact family, home, and childhood? Again, this is where Athol really jumps the shark in his old stuff. She's talking about don't get chicks in divorce, and I'm sure you guys have all heard the same 10 lists of what to find for an alpha female. Number 6 will surprise you, whatever. I don't like this because it's just completely ignorant to modern dating. You will not find a girl who's from a healthy, stable home. I mean, you will, but the odds are less and less. At least half of you guys are going to have a kid that's a child of divorce, probably with some daddy issues. So vetting for this, that's great, but I don't find it to be a good structure and a good strategy if you have to rely on flipping a coin. You know what I mean? He says make a few allowances for black sheeps in the family. So even then he admits it's no guarantee. You could have a nice family. She could still be the one that just wanted to be a stripper. So just completely ignore the family history. It's not helpful. Just pay attention to what's right in front of you and stop looking for secondary markers, because I'm not going to lie to you. Every secondary marker I've seen, absolute BS. Not only can I come up with exceptions from it, I can come up with many exceptions from it. Tattoos, great example. My town where I was in the military, Victoria, no girl didn't have tattoos. So tattoo gave you no indication. Maybe a face tattoo, but tattoos were no indication of the quality of a girl or her investment towards you. So I just ignore it. Same thing as a positive family history. Divorced parents, unmarried parents, cohabitating parents, religious parents. Tangential. Completely didn't matter. So again, why would you focus? If these things aren't good markers, don't even use them. And I'm actually annoyed that he put this in here, because he's done his research. He's talked with a bunch of guys, and how he could still come up with that drivel is beyond me. Minimal prior baggage, the next one. Again, sometimes baggage is a major red flag. She's capable of making really bad decisions or incapable of self-control. Sometimes baggage is just the result of shockingly bad luck, but it's still baggage nonetheless. Here's the thing. Single mom baggage. I even have a chapter in my book where I say single moms, the saddest, most sympathetic situation that's not my problem. Some girls really, it's not their fault. I didn't mean that, truly. It's not their fault. The baggage they have is because, Uncle Touchy did something early on, or a guy, struggle hugged her. Now she's stuck with a kid and her religious beliefs wouldn't do this thing. So none of it's your problem. Stop trying to save people. And yes, everybody has a sob story. Every victim has a sob story, and it's not your problem. It's not your job to take on these hardships just because it makes you feel noble inside. That's one of the strongest things. And out of all this stuff, there's going to be a lot to take from it, but this is the thing to take from it. It is not your job to save the world. It's not. You're working your ass off to get your life better. Why would you sabotage that by picking up somebody else's problems? No. If you want a relationship with you, and I would argue this is one of the few hard and fast rules, don't bring that crap to my doorstep. And here's something you're going to notice when it comes to struggle hugging. So I've had friends, they've had their instances with, struggle hugging and that. I didn't know about that for years. And then I've known other people who, acquaintances, lead with that. First date, telling a guy. I remember that because I was in the military. A lot of my military guys like, hey, somebody name dropped you yesterday. I was on a date with her. Do you know, Gia? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Yeah. Did you know about this? I'm like, yeah, she tells everybody that. I'm like, why would she do that? I'm like, I don't know. But it's the funny thing. So for prior baggage, it's tangential to the issue. Somebody can have an assault early on in their life, completely move past it, and just not put themselves in that situation. Some people can fixate on it to an unhealthy level. So it's not so much having the baggage, it's about how it's expressed and how you find out. If they're leading it to you for sympathy points, then right there, they're using that as a cudgel to get their way in life. You know, if it's the kind of thing you never find out about it, they never talk about it, chances are they've generally moved past it. Having said that, if you're with a single mom and she hides the kids from you for a year, probably not the best idea ever. So again, you got to use your noggin on this stuff. But, yeah. Yeah, Uncle Touchy. My girl and I used to do that as a joke if we were in lineups at a store and it was too long. Just because we wanted to enjoy ourselves, I always said, it's like, you know, it's better than rubbing one out in your living room. And she'd always like, and I would say, yeah, girly girl. And she'd say, oh, please, Uncle Touchy, no, bad touch. People would look around all strange. What the hell are these people doing? She was like 19 at the time too, so it was pretty fun. Anyways, enough about that. Minimal prior baggage. Just pick what you want, and just having baggage isn't the big deal, but you can usually tell when somebody's using their baggage as leverage to get a power position in the relationship. That's the stuff to look out for. Not so much baggage in general, because unfortunately, everybody's going to have baggage. Every girl will have baggage. If they don't have baggage, they will make baggage up. And those are the ones to be scared of. Those are the ones to be avoidant of. People that don't have baggage, but pretend to have baggage. They'll say something like, you know, my dad emotionally abused me. Like, what does that even mean? And you find out it's like he didn't buy her that pony when she was 9. Zero baggage, perfectly warm, comfortable life. But that, I would argue, is worse than a girl who got a lot of assaulting early on in some, you know, weird backwater third world country, came here, put it past her and moved on. So yeah, not even baggage. It's just perceived baggage. I guess that's the best way to put it. She has a clue. This one I don't think is totally applicable either. Like, I don't care what she does at college or even if she goes, but either way, she needs some sort of direction and purpose to her life. In a large part, girls don't have purpose. They don't need to. They can kind of get through life just kind of going with the flow. Ideally, you should have purpose, and you should see how well she latches onto that. If she's driven by your vision, and having a vision from a beta and an alpha perspective is a very attractive quality. Knowing you're single-minded in something that she can join on with shows you're completely aloof to the relationship or any BS she does. At the same time, it gives that comfort. So vision is actually a very important thing. Now, it's different from goals, and that's different from a mission. A vision is like, where do you see yourself in the future? And it could be sort of on the vague side, but nothing like, I want to be the best man ever, because that's not a vision. A vision is like, I'm running a company, $1 million kind of thing. $1 million company, high priced. I don't want to fixate on this though, because as soon as you start talking about vision, a lot of guys start, you know, dreaming too much. And it's not so much dreaming, it's that your actions are directly driven towards whatever your goals are. That tends to work out as a vision in practical terms. From a legal perspective, it's kind of the difference between common law and civil law. If you guys don't know, French law is civil law, common law is Anglo. In Canada, anybody who's from Quebec will know this. Civil law is, they'll have like a certain set of like codified laws, and then civil law is they make judges like, how well does this fit within those laws? Basically, the law is the law, and everything has to meet within those, as opposed to common law, which is, all right, what did we do last time? Well, let's do that this time because it made sense. It's a small distinction, but if you learn it, it's kind of a good way to understand the difference between vision and that. But I mean, my girl, she worked in a bank when we first started dating. I was in the military. I moved to Montreal. She moved with me. The bank ended up doing like some weird shenanigans there, screwed over her pension. She ended up getting another job, kind of doing like some fun stuff, working at a bar. That was fun times. Then after that, she got on some corporate work, Fortune 500, and she's just crushing it there too. None of this stuff she had pictured when I first started dating her at 19. But she had a clue. She knew what she was doing. And she kind of like, I basically dragged her around the country and she went there and she was driven to succeed. So that was pretty awesome. So I don't need a girl. You don't need a girl to have a vision. You just need a girl to have potential. Ideally a virgin. Again, this chapter, 28 Tech 10, completely useless. No girl's a virgin. There's none. Any guy who's been successful in high school sexually will tell you most of the girls he's known, and I can vouch for this too. When I tell the story often, when I went into grade 8, my first year of high school, elementary school, grade 7, so 12 years old to 13, showed up at grade 8. My one friend that I used to play with on the playground, she got pregnant. I was buying a Super Nintendo. She was buying breast milk. Most girls don't make it till 15. Now, we can argue whether it's the baggage thing, or we could argue whether it's willing, or we could argue whether it's just, thoughts being thoughts. Regardless, looking for a virgin this day and age, you're not going to find one. Just get that thought out of your head. I think that's why even he admits it when he says ideally. But I don't agree with that either, because that's one of those secondary traits. The reason that guys want virgins, it used to be paternity, but it's at the point now where we have ways of deducting paternity. You got blood tests, sperm tests, 21andMe, it's all kinds of ways. So paternity is your issue. Virgin's not a deal breaker. A lot of guys have that, though, as an instinctive thing. But again, there's a lot of guys who have kind of dated their high school sweetheart, virgin when they met. She dates them, has 2 kids, then decides to go and, run up a pole. There was just a story in the news a little while ago about a pastor's wife, or a pastor. Wonderful, godly woman. Virgin when she married the guy, left to become a stripper. What are you going to do? Virgin is tangential to this stuff, and arguably, you're not able to marry until much later in life anyway. Technologically wise, it's just not the case where you can. It used to be you could at 15, 16, 17 work on the farm, 18 get yourself a wife, 19, 20 move out, build yourself a house, get everybody to raise your barn together. Bam, your life is set up, you're economic surplus. Then the factories came, you could do that 19, 20. By 21, 22 you could be married, moving on. That's great. Remember what I said before, where sexual maturity for people happens around 15? You can wait 5 years. A lot of you guys have had 5-year dry spells. I mean, whatever. Problem is now, college degree, university education, a couple years, the housing market has just made it where you have to be almost 30 years old to be able to get even a leg up on your life. And you're asking somebody to stay a virgin for 15 years? It's not going to happen. And then if you want to start dating underage girls, that's fine, but just realize you're probably breaking the law, and I do not recommend it. At the end of this one, it's just making unreasonable expectations, and by leading with this, you're just encouraging women to lie. And you're going to pick up the kind of girl who's able to accurately deceive you based on what you want. This kind of idealistic thinking is how guys end up with BPD chicks, because they are masters at reading body language, and you lead with your feelings, so they reflect everything you want to see back at you. And then that's what happens. Once they got you hooked, then they lose interest. You basically got a couple hits of crack, and then they pulled away the crack. So just ignore that. The next one is what's important, though. Totally into you sexually. 28 tack 11. Best, most important part here. So this is a counterpoint of sorts to the virgin one. Once we were engaged, my wife and I pretty much ran roughshod over the rules about no sex before marriage. We were still each other's first, which is the essential point of the virgin thing, but so sexually activated on each other that we simply did not care what anybody else had to say or think on the matter. If you're getting her best, it doesn't matter. That's why that most famous post from Rollo, Saving the Best, a guy who found out his girl that was kind of sexually prudish used to be a whore back in the day. And he's like, I don't mind that she used to be a whore. I'm just mad that you're not a whore for me. More than anything, more than baggage, more than virgin status, more than any of this stuff, if she's totally into you sexually, that's the one non-fungible trait that you can see. If a girl's willing to go down on you in an Arby's bathroom, then you know she's the one for you. But yeah, that's really the only metric you have. Enthusiastic long-term sex with non-sexual investment. Those are the only 2 metrics you use. I would make a video on it, but I can't make like the 2 things that matter for a good relationship. Number 1 and 2 will surprise you. They're not surprising. They're just simple. But they don't make good videos, so that's why I have to flip it in at the very end of like a 16-episode series here. He mentions here too, emotion is not her only tool. Ideally, your wife should be able to problem solve with something other than her emotions. Keep dreaming, bud. They all do. At this point, it's the same as, and I don't mean to equate them as dogs, but it's like training a dog. Consistently disincentivize emotional problem solving from her perspective, and encourage more of a rational system, more adult-like conversations. Again, there's another series I'm going to be doing in the future about transactional analysis, which will show you a lot more stuff in depth. But just realize it boils down to don't reward bad behavior and reward good behavior. So every girl is going to have emotion as one of her only tools. It's only once it's not effective consistently over time that she's eventually going to switch to more useful tools. Girls may be slow, but they're not stupid. She has a talent. Again, I don't know why you would date somebody who's completely useless, But yeah, try to have a girl that's good at something, other than smashing. But I'm not going to waste a whole chapter on it. He mentions that thing you really need, which is a catch-all. If it's important to you, it's important. Don't assume, if a girl says she'll do it in the future, don't trust it. Berfault's law. Once you agree to that settling down, her terms of the contract are null and void. So if, like you said, the skinny fat thing we had talked about earlier in the super chat, if that's important to you, well, then that's important to you. It's a deal breaker. She wants in, she can get there. And then almost good enough isn't good enough. I like this one because a lot of guys give me this speech when I was doing consulting. They always say, yeah, this girl's a great girl. It's either a plate or a wife. Doesn't matter. So, oh, yeah, she's great. She's perfect. She's good with the kids. She's great in bed. High quality woman. And I know you guys are laughing at me on this. I'm like, oh, all right. So what makes her high quality? And he's like, well, she sleeps with me, essentially. And they always bring up like 18 red flags. And I'm like, holy geez, dude. There's a reason I laugh at this. But he talks about how he was dating a girl in college before he met his wife. Beautiful, smart, blah, blah, blah. We started talking about sex. And what frequency of the other sexual impulses and horniness came up. And he goes, for me, about 5 or 6 times. And she said, I don't know, once or twice. So we just stood at each other, staring at each other, waiting. He goes, a day? She goes, no, a month. He goes, really? She goes, yeah, really. And he never considered her again. If a girl's not sexually into you, and I don't even agree with the concept of low libido, short of a girl who's on SSRIs and has like a muted sex drive because of chemical castration, get the right guy there and a girl will have a great sex drive. So I wouldn't even have these conversations. Actions speak, words are lies. And then he ends it, same thing I said, know that beauty fades. At some point, her beauty will fade, and all that will truly matter is her personality and ability to love. Her character and kindness matter a great deal over the long term. So shut your eyes and listen to the tone of her voice she uses with other people when she thinks you aren't listening. It could be very revealing. There's actually a better one from this. Again, I think this is Uncle Vaz. It might be Vandaline from the Red Pill subreddit. But if you truly want to know a woman, see how she acts to people that she doesn't need anything from. Put your girl in a situation. If you want to see if she's right for your boundaries, see how she treats people that she doesn't have to be nice to. See how she treats people she doesn't have to need anything from. How does she treat somebody that there's no value and no social signaling in her being kind towards? That right there will tell you everything you need to know. And I would argue, again, not many hard and fast rules, but that one there should be a permanent indication to you that you should not wife up this woman. You should not long-term relationship this woman. Keep her in the sex only box because she's just shown you that's all she's good for. Self-interest and sex. So just treat her the way she wants to be treated. Or learn the hard way like so many guys who've gone MGTOW will already tell you. Next one, make sure she isn't in debt. Girls are all in debt. It's so weird. It's almost like a dowry. I would argue you can't really find a girl who's not in debt unless they still live with their parents. Even then, most likely they have blown their money on something. What I would argue is you just don't, unless she's paying down those debts, don't even bother. Again, that's just self-interest from your side. You should be keeping your finances separate anyway, because I find in general, guys tend to be better with their money than women. And by mixing finances, all you're doing is giving her a buffer of financial irrationality so that she can act somewhat stupider. And then you want to make more money to cover the shortfall. It just sets you up for failure right at the start. Instead, the best strategies I've seen so far are if you come into the money with a lot more money than the girl has, before you even think about settling down, maybe you want a family, whatever. And again, we don't have a lot of field reports out of this right now, so I can't say this is perfect, and this will change over time. But they talk about them as blind trusts. Essentially, you put your money in a trust, you don't control it, you have somebody you trust to be like the trust board or however it works out in your legislation. And then they have certain gates. This is for children, it's their money. It basically gives your net worth to a corporate entity that you don't get any control over. And then you set up clear directions on what it's for. It's been the best answer I've seen for guys who want to do that and make sure their kids get monies at a certain age. This is for college when they turn 18. If they make X amount of dollars at a job, then they can get the rest of it. However you organize, it's up to you. It's the best approach we've seen so far. But again, not enough results from it. It's still brand new. The other one, and this is the one that I've known has worked in the short term, I do it myself. just separate finances. She has her account, you have yours. You've got a third joint account that's just for communal things. That's bills, that's mortgage payments, that's anything that the two of you together have to put in on. You do all the calculations, you're like, all right, every month, $2,376 goes in that account. As long as they meet that, whatever else is aside from the point. Now, you might want to put your future investments in there too, retirement savings, that kind of thing. Essentially, you make it as simple as you can for the fiscally irresponsible. X amount of dollars has to go in there every month. No negotiation. So those are the two ways. Again, if you guys have started to go the trust route, or if you know of anything else, please let me know in the chat. I'm actually very curious about this one, and unfortunately, we're still a little bit new into the process and don't have this. He ends off with, don't marry a quitter, which, if she has any sort of problem giving up on completing important tasks like education, keeping a job, or doing major projects simply because they're hard or require effort, she'll probably quit on you. Again, I find it kind of tangential. Some girls are completely objectively like committed to succeeding in their job, and they'll still leave you in a heartbeat. So if being a quitter or not doesn't make a difference, why even focus on it? Don't even waste your time. But that's with most. This is another. Okay, so this is why I don't find vetting from a red pill perspective to be a useful strategy. There's actually 7 reasons. I have it on my blog. I'll pull up the link to it so you guys can see. Here we go. 7 parts, 2,000 words a piece. It's a bit of a long one. First part is you don't know what you want. Because that's why you're listening to some dude on the internet tell you 7 reasons to pick a good woman. What does he do? Oh, you want a virgin. You want a girl without baggage. Like all these things here. These are just tangential lists. They may work, they may not. They give you a false sense of security. So you don't know what you want. You're going to have a great ability to rationalize what the world gives you. If you dated goth girls when you were growing up, goth girls are the hottest girls on earth to you. Because that's what you got. And your brain knows. All right, well then just make them like that. If all you dated was princesses, that's all you're going to have. Princesses, that's your thing. That's your kink. So second part is vetting a woman is for vetting for values. And the question is, whose values are they? A lot of us have been instilled with feminine values, things for the what Rollo would call the feminine imperative, and they're created by and for women to meet their own needs, not yours. So a lot of the time, the values you have aren't actually helpful from you. So just vetting alone, the garbage in, garbage out. Like at the same time, vetting only works if everybody who's within your vetting sphere is immunized from outside influence. In this case, short of being part of a commune, I doubt it's going to happen. You could vet for the perfect wife, but there's just way too many outside influences. All it takes is one divorced chick in the neighborhood, one friend who got separated, or, just the right time, right place kind of guy. Nothing you can do. You can't vet for black swan events. Next part is vetting for values is a narcissistic fantasy, and it serves to hide the true nature of women and men in order to live in the narrative it presents. So by the time the masks come off, it's too late. What do I mean by this? Well, when you're vetting, you're basically leading with what you're looking to see. And most guys can't help but themselves, but say what they're looking for. Well, I like this, and I like that. And girls are very good at interrogating it out. Now, if you got a girl that's got some ulterior motive, she's very easily able to play to the crowd. She'll show you everything you want to see. They can keep that up for a good year, 2 years sometimes. And eventually, and usually by then, the courtship's over, the marriage is in, the mask comes off because now she doesn't put effort into it anymore. And that's the problem. So you're just vetting for a fantasy, and you're vetting for who could best fulfill your fantasies, not who's necessarily the person that you value. Same time, vetting creates an ego investment, where if you ignore anything outside of your vetted criteria, if the list is wrong, it's an attack on your ego, and you're going to fight tooth and nail to protect it. What do I mean by this? When you're vetting, you want the person to win. And so you're going to ignore obvious things that are wrong with the person, and you're going to see things that are okay as like extravagant. Same case in point. American just had a presidential election, and I'm watching punditry on either side of it. And it was like they were watching a different thing. The people that wanted the Republican president to win would say, oh, he just owned him. He owned him. He owned him. And then the people that wanted the nominee for the Democratic Party says the same thing. Oh, he owned him. He owned him. He owned him. We see what we want to see. And by vetting, You're seeing what you want to see, even if somebody doesn't have it. And so it just sets you up for failure. Next part is, even if the narcissistic masks are off, that didn't work, they're not fulfilling your fantasies. Maybe if you're completely honest with your interactions with you, she's honest with you, no ulterior motives, everything goes exactly according to plan, which you've already shown it doesn't. All you're getting is a snapshot of her behavior. This is what she's like right now. 5 years from now, after, like, what are some of the big events? Maybe she gets a new job that's across the country that'll upend your career and set you aside. Maybe she decides she wants a baby. Maybe, like, tons of maybes. Maybe she comes into a lottery winning. A lot of girls get a bunch of money and then they just don't want their man anymore. So you're never going to get longevity with your vetting. It's just going to give you a snapshot. And a snapshot is a poor way to set up a longitudinal life script. And then the final point is, vetting is often done to the exclusion of actual relationship strategies. Boundary enforcement is far superior and doesn't require a lifetime of instilling feminine values in a man in order to understand them. End of the day, do I want this? Do I not want this? You focus on that. And again, that's why a lot of this stuff just doesn't work. Don't worry about tricks and tips and tactics. Don't worry about secondary indications. Just focus on, what do I want? And if you don't know what you want, well, then keep your options open until you sort it out and just get rid of the things that you don't want. Because it's very easy. If you don't know 97% of the stuff out there, you can pick between 3%. But if you don't know what you want, so you just pick what everybody tells you, you're going to get what everybody else wants you to have, not what you want for yourself. Don't let life happen to you. Live your life. He does make a hedge here in chapter 29, Marriage 2.0. Unless you're completely confident in your choice and ability to maintain your relationship, I suggest don't get married at all. I would just say don't get married. There is no benefit to you. And here's a question I posit to everybody who's pro-marriage. What is it as a man you get when you're married that you don't get cohabitating elsewhere? One person, why more please, is the only one who's ever been able to answer that question to anybody's satisfaction. People say, well, it's because of kids. You're like, well, you don't need kids. You don't need a marriage certificate for kids. A lot of people have them outside wedlock. Yeah, but but then there'll be bastard children. It's like, dude, this isn't the Middle Ages. Nobody cares about that anymore. People forgive everybody for everything now, so that's not even an issue. They're like, oh, well, you need it because the wife's not comfortable. She thinks you could just leave her at any time. It's like, well, you already can. And at the end of the day, you just find out the only reasons that most people give is because they're afraid that the girl will leave them if they don't. Scarcity. Well, you have to be willing. Weimer, please, the one answer he gave that was good is if you're working as a diplomat or an expat, certain countries refuse to acknowledge common law or cohabitation. And so legally, there may be certain rights that you're missing out on without it. But in that very narrow case, it makes sense. Outside of that, just call somebody your wife. I did a video too about Janice Fiamengo's really bad take on a 97th richest guy in Canada and his marriage. You can basically you don't have to do the certification you can do arbitration. You just have to be honest with the courts. But that's going to be something I'm going to deal with a little bit here. So, law was what defined Marriage 1.0. Marriage 1.0 is marriage in the agricultural revolution. And this is where, again, you needed paternity. There was no other way to test other than a girl who was a virgin. There was no other way to guarantee you were the only father to her kids. And they wanted that because you had property and private property, and that's the only way to give it down was like knowing paternity. So while it is all becoming ancient history, it's important to understand that Marriage 1.0 was not just a social creation, but a legally defined structure that spelled out what marriage was. With modern marriage, aka Marriage 2.0, nearly all the legal rules of Marriage 1.0 have changed. In some ways, these changes are good and valuable, and in many other ways, there have been a mess of unintended consequences that undermine the very institution. Marriage 2.0 is the era of no-fault divorce. Adultery laws were repealed, marital rape laws added, and a divorce industry that profits off of protracted legal battles. The downsides of Marriage 1.0 was that it shackled couples together, regardless of happiness and enjoyment of each other. At least it used sex as an enticement to become and stay married. The downside of Marriage 2.0 is that was intended as a permanent arrangement is becoming increasingly temporary. Yeah, so it's no longer permanent. It's no longer death do us part. So you got to see the reality of it. The trap for people getting married today is that going into a Marriage 2.0 relationship, but having the romantic illusion that you're going into a 1.0 relationship. Oh, it's like 3 sneezes already. Excuse me. Must have had a case of the COVID. Importantly, men are very much taught to respect and place women on a pedestal when it comes to relationships, and many simply cannot comprehend that their wives ever struggle with the issues of commitment and fidelity. Accept reality. Marriage 1.0 bids a fond farewell and learn what Marriage 2.0 is really about. Adapt and become stronger. The law that defines Marriage 2.0 is a legal creation, legally defined and constructed by process of law. Notice it's not a contract. A lot of guys say marriage is a contract. It's not. It's a legal status. There's legal frameworks around it, but there is no contract because there's no consideration. If you don't know what that means if there's nothing in it for you, then it cannot be a contract. And there is nothing in it for a guy. The way you are married and what being married means was decided by your local politicians and signed into by law. You just happen to agree to abide by whatever it was that decided marriage is. It does vary from state to state, but typically requires a state-authorized marriage celebrant, a statement of mutual intent, and a small amount of paperwork. How romantic. And then he talks about how weddings 2.0 are a marriage 1.0 fantasy day. I won't go into details of that. A lot of girls would prefer to be married, prefer the wedding over a marriage. Like, same as the idea of, like, I like having kids more than raising kids. Or I want to be a good parent, not raise good kids. Marriage law is also vague. He uses a great reference here to, like, fishing licenses. So, for example, if marriage license was like a fishing license, it wouldn't... Oh, if a marriage license was a fishing license, it wouldn't actually spell out things like when you could fish, what size of fish was too small, what the daily limits was. It would just say, this is a fishing license. Please enjoy your fishing license. And then in a law about use of public waterways, there'd be a clause that stated people with fishing licenses may fish. It's a very odd way of organizing things. So even more bizarre in a marriage is that there's minimal reference to having sex. Why else would a guy settle down? Other than a promise of fidelity and sexual access. That's what the point of to have and hold is, but that's the point. The one thing, there's 2 things that benefit men. The ability to have children and the ability to have frequent sex. That benefit a man in a marriage, unless you're marrying a rich girl, but most guys aren't. You take away those 2 things, what's left? Plow horse. And then he makes a case for it's legally, every marriage is an open marriage. And that's where adultery laws have been defined as a criminal act in the past, meaning having sex with somebody else's spouse was illegal. So by default imply that you had to maintain sexual faithfulness to the other person. Now with adultery laws, they've been removed from the law everywhere. And all that's left is merely a societal expectation of sexual fidelity, but not a legal requirement of it. So marriage is no guarantee that she's going to be on the straight and narrow. So if you're thinking if I put a ring on that, I'll keep her steady. There's no, like, wishing. Wish in one hand, shit in the other, see what fills up first. So in one sense, all marriages are open marriages, whether you want them to be or not. Your wife can have sex with anybody else and likely wouldn't have broken any laws or any legal marriage agreement by doing so. She could have a torrid affair and then you file your taxes together. How jaded is that? I love it. No guarantee in sex. And that's because marital rape laws are basically designed that even though you're married, you're not entitled to sex. Now, a lot of older cultures still may have that on the books where you can't turn your husband down. Which is funny because there's so many things that you have to do. This is the only thing that predominantly benefits men, and it's the only thing that's been added to the marriage law. So it's kind of funny. Now, I'm not suggesting I want to go back to that. I like the idea of gaming. I like hunt what you kill. I like, approaching, being charismatic. It's just, at the same time, then, like, what's the point? If marriage doesn't have certain obligations to it, then what's the point of it? Meh. The one point here, it's kind of near and dear to my heart, is, oops, you got married by accident. Depending on the state, there can also be cohabitation laws that kick in after a certain number of years living together. After that, cohabitation law may essentially backdoor you into a de facto marriage agreement without you being fully aware of the law. So for example, and it's common law marriage. In Canada, it's 2 years. Other than Quebec. Quebec doesn't recognize it, I believe. But from a legal standpoint, it's actually a lot better off. So for example, with a marriage, there are certain trial separation periods. I think it's 12 months. It might have changed. I've been a little out of date on that because I didn't bother looking it up because I don't care. Separations, you have to have lawyers. You have to go through a separation agreement. You have to have a judge. There's a framework that's built around divorce. A lot of people make a lot of money from it. Divorce Incorporated, great example of it running haywire in the States. But a common law, relationship, arbitration. Arbitration is much less expensive, much less torturous, and insofar as you take care of certain legal obligations, this is the one little back door that's kind of neat that's happening now, is that the children have to be taken care of. But in Ontario law, they have a neat thing where it's the children are required by law to have equal to or higher quality of life than the separated spouse. Which is basically saying, if you're a husband, if you make all the money, you do the stay-at-home wife thing, and you guys separate, she gets the kids, and she has to have a better quality of life than you. Or, I mean, the kids do, but it's essentially her. Because there's no mechanism to ensure that your money only goes towards the children. They're considered intertwined, which is why it's so bad in Ontario. They actually have a deadbeat list. You can go online and look up any guy who's defunct on any of his child support payments. Publicly shamed, jail time, and then you get into that whole loop. And it's gotten so bad that there's like news stories coming out of guys who just basically expatriate. They're like, I can't handle this. I love my kids, but financially it's too much of a burden. And they go to countries with non-extradition. David Foley, Kids in the Hall. Perfect example of that. You can go look that one up if you're curious about it. Think of another one where a guy ended up having to go to the Philippines. He basically had to give up the country he's lived in his whole life, contact with friends and family, because essentially his wife just weaponized the court system against him because of a divorce. Arbitration makes that a lot softer and a lot easier. But again, it's no guarantee, so just something to be aware of. But if push comes to shove, if it becomes that much of a downtrodden situation, then absconsion sometimes is the only thing you can do. In fact, I'm surprised there hasn't been more stories of guys trying to seek, I don't know if it would be like a political asylum, but it's essentially debtor's prison, which I thought we had sorted out during the age of the Magna Carta, but, you know, we did a back run on it. It's okay we're doing it now because it's for the women and the best interest of the children. Yeah, the best interest of the children was to have a dad, so clearly that's a very subjective term. If I mean to give you guys Debbie Downer tips here, I don't mean to, but you just eyes open. This is maybe the most MGTOW speech you're going to get from me, but have your eyes open, understand the risks involved, start to read your local law. It's mostly online now, so you should be able to find this stuff. And if you aren't prepared, don't have her move in. Keep a girl in her separate place. Don't refer to her as wife. Don't buy her a ring. Don't do any things that signal you want to be married. And then the courts can argue that, yeah, you're not married, you're just dating. At the same time, reward good behavior, don't reward bad behavior. It's all very simple stuff. The problem is guys are so incongruent that they think they can have it both ways. I don't want to have to go through the conflict or the possible loss that goes with telling her she can't move in, but I want the law to recognize that I don't want to be her husband. It's like, no, man, you got to take charge in this, and you have to be okay. You might be the bad guy. You just have to be okay with it. And he breaks the case for marriage, creates the financial team. He talks about filing taxes together. It's like a pittance. I'm not even going to give this thing any credence. Read it if you want. Divorce and moral hazard. Again, this is Threat Point by Dalrock, a great example of this one. Let's pull that up. I'm not going to do much on this one because it's already been talked about quite a few times, but just know the way the law is worked out right now, it incentivizes the person who wants to dissolve the relationship, not the one who wants to keep it together. And why? Because, well, if you don't have to pay when she leaves, then the state will have to. And no politician is going to sign on for that. Why would I take on extra burdens? No, man. You do it. Yeah, it'll make that guy miserable, but from the state's perspective, they don't care. One miserable guy that puts a bullet in his head versus me getting reelected because I didn't raise taxes, it's a no-brainer. Nobody cares about men. And for a lot of guys, they don't do themselves any favors by having an outburst. Yes, very unjust. Yes, it's very hard. But the guy who gets angry at court and starts yelling at his wife over it just established that he's basically a borderline abuser. And just from everybody else's risk perspective, they can't take the chance that he's just frustrated. And so they will throw the book at you. And a lot of girls know that, and they will bait you into it. They will say some of the meanest stuff you've ever seen. They will go absolutely feral during a divorce case because they want you to lose your cool in front of the law. And then you're screwed. So yeah, just realize, don't take the bait. Don't feed the trolls, man. He does make reference too to the you don't get to have kids, you get to sire children. That's one there, like, guys, I want to have kids. Like, they're not your kids. They're her kids. You get to be a dad at the whims of mom. Well, being a dad is the most important job. If it isn't, then why is it that a girl can get your replacement in less than 12 months? Weekend dad, weekday dad, stepdad. Stepdads are everywhere. In fact, a lot of the time, the kids often say how stepdad was even better. So the job of father is a temporary one. It's not a permanent one. And yes, some girls will respect that. That's fine. But that's the thing. You're leaving it up to a personal choice of the girl that can't stand you as to whether you get to have an involvement in your kid's life. It's not a good one. And he does get one thing wrong. So I want to correct this. This is the important thing. As you guys have probably watched enough videos where you know the downsides of this, but he does get something wrong here. He says, even worse, studies show that roughly 8 to 10% of all children have their biological fathers misidentified. Now, that's not entirely true, and it paints a bit of a bad picture. What it is they did some studies deciding like how much paternity fraud is there. Now, the number they had come up with, and you're going to see a lot of MGTOWs throwing it out, 30%. They did a study, and of all the tests that they did, 30% of them ended up being different biological fathers. Like, oh my God, a third of guys out there are cucked. Not true. They forget that the self-selected for the group who had doubts of paternity to begin with. So that leaves the question out. The remaining portion of the population, and I think it was like 12% of people were the ones that had paternity doubts and they did the tests. So the thing you could take away from that is if you have any doubt about the paternity of your children, you got a 1 in 3 chance of being right, which is not the same thing. Now, we don't know what it is across the population. We'd have to do like a very big randomized sample of the population to do that. Maybe select against that first group, people who have no doubts about paternity, then do those tests. I don't know. But right now it's becoming so very easy and cheap. It's not hard to do a 21andMe, do a family tree thing with your kids to find out. I would argue getting this stuff done before you sign on to a birth certificate is a big deal, because for a lot of guys, once you've signed that piece of paper, then you've acknowledged that they're your children. And same thing with marriage. Even if you're just cohabitating, as soon as you say she's your wife, you treat her like a wife, you give her a ring, even if you haven't gotten a marriage, the law will consider that good enough. You basically said, I want to do this. So yeah, don't say things you don't mean. So he does, and I'll do the good summary. We're just over time right now, but I want to end this off on a very dour note. Summarizing it, marriage doesn't guarantee that she will have sex with you, be faithful, or stay with you. It legally creates a financial team that may result in ongoing financial support after a divorce, and is very likely support for any children she has during the marriage, whether or not they're yours. So it's, again, what's in it for me? If a girl really truly wants to get married, she has to answer that question, what's in it for you? And they won't. So just do what you want. But I'm saying from a strategic standpoint, there is no benefit in it. And if you're married beforehand, that's the card you're in right now. And that's what these strategies are for anyway. This is a large part as to why I don't like when single guys try and apply married red-pilled strategies in their own lives. It's like, dude, you're not there. Next should be your useful tool. Ruthlessly tool. He had some stuff about why to get married anyway. And here's the funny part. He says when marriage works well, it works very well for men. Another thing he gets wrong. Study after study suggests that married men are happier and healthier than unmarried men. Plus, married men have more sex than unmarried men. The first part he gets wrong. They say married men are happier, live longer, earn more money. It's like, no. What happens is men who are healthier, men who are happier, and men who do earn more money are selected for to get married. Girls want to marry those guys, and so they fill the ranks with that. So if you're a miserable, unhealthy guy, you're probably going to be single a lot longer on average. So don't think that getting married will make you healthy. Being healthy makes it more likely you're going to get married. The married men having more sex than unmarried men, I'd argue that is the case. Even on my best years of game, I've had more sex in a relationship than outside. Most guys do. Almost all guys do. Other than the very top percent. But there's no guarantees on it. That's the thing. You're going to be hunting for what you eat anyway. So it's just a matter of, do you want to do it with one girl or you want to do it with multiple girls? And that's a choice for you to make, not me. But here's the key point when I ask what's in it for me, that most people, this is their go-to answer. A benefit is that many women have a deep need for security and safety in order to feel safe enough to fully embrace their sexuality. Chore play. You know, if you just did more dishes, maybe I'd be comfortable enough and we'd have sex more. That's it right there. I'm not going to keep having sex to you if you don't marry me. If you don't give me all these advantages. That works if you're worried about losing her. Just don't do it. Anyways, and then he ends it off with, and this is the point I'll end it on. This is very good news for a man that your wife is freer than any generation of women before her. This can translate into her happiness, energy, and sexual enjoyment with you. If it's working well, the sexual connection is fantastic and better than any form of marriage before now. It's better in that there's no restrictions. You're basically free to succeed or fail by your own merits, which for most guys sucks. But again, you shouldn't have to get married. And he's saying, best case scenario, things are good. Things will be good anyways. Things can be good in long-term relationships. Things can be good cohabitating. Marriage doesn't create the goodness. And I'll end on that one. Oh yeah, he's got 10 things to do right now. Yeah, whatever. This is just basically a summary of the entire book. Gives you top 10 lists. I'm just going to skip that. Anyways, so yeah, not on the most positive note how we ended up here, but that's fine. I figure at the very least here, we're going to be honest about this stuff. So thank you. Here's the end. Married Man Sex Life Primer. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself. Thank you for making it through the entire series. Also, I can see you guys with the likes. Thank you very much for liking this, showing some engagement, commenting on the channel. Those little things right there and your watch time really help encourage other people to see and watch these videos. It helps us grow as a channel. Always come down, check on the Patreon. End of the month is coming up. So if you're curious about it and you haven't tried it yet, go give it a shot. The link's in the description. Sign on after the end of the month. Sign on the beginning of next month. You got a full 4 weeks to come in, see if it's for you, and if you like it, stick around. It's like the price of a cup of coffee, and you're going to get a good 8 to 10 hours of content that other people don't get on stuff that's personalized toward you, as well as some additional things as I get them done, early access to videos, different posts, a whole bunch of stuff that I basically just don't release publicly, and it's just for those guys, as well as access to the locker room, great set of forums, basically guys swapping notes. It's kind of as close as we've gotten to the Married Man Sex Life Primer. All holds barred, no holds barred, I mean. No language filters, no SJW stuff, no worries about moderator crap. It's private, it's discreet, you guys can talk about anything, and there's no chance of that SJW nonsense shutting us down. Come on in, check it out. Jeez, though. Alright, I'm going to start reading some comments here, and let's end this off with the end card. Thanks again, guys. Jeez, coworker also committed suicide a couple weeks ago. Manager, wife divorced him, 1 kid, she was messing around. He just got funded half of his 401k. Couldn't find a girl, tried gay, dude left him, OD. Jesus. Absolutely brutal, man. That's the problem. If you latch onto this stuff, it gets you hooked. If it doesn't happen the way you want, a lot of guys end it. It's very sad. Anyways, guys, I'll check you later.